Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslach talking about reciprocity.com. The E is spelled with a 3. In this particular video, I really wanted to talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning and whether we actually should be worried about this idea of rogue AI. It's a question that I actually get a lot from my students. I'm a professor of innovation, strategy, and entrepreneurship, and sometimes we have an interesting conversation about this. So what I'm going to get into is just kind of a brief overview of what exactly is machine learning from my point of view. You know, I'm not a computer scientist, so they're going to have a different view, and then get into, when and why we should actually worry about artificial intelligence going forward, or even if we should be worrying about that. So what is machine learning? From my perspective, it is simply just the application of statistics, and it's along the line of sort of using tools that we've used repeatedly in the past, and a substantial amount of tools that we've used over the past, and it's kind of an extension from what we've already did in the past to where we're going in the future. And it's a lot of it is just using sort of basic statistics and using different kinds of statistics to predict where we're going in the future. We do this a lot as human beings, except for we don't have quite the same amount of information that machines have, and we don't process information at the same speed that machines do. So they're going to be able to do this much more faster. And what's really cool is that the machines will be able to sort of teach themselves based on the information available on where to go next. So there's a degree of prediction, and that's the key thing with machine learning that's different than what we have right now, is that there's not a lot of prediction that's going on right now. So a lot of this stuff is really hard-coded. But in the future, there's going to be prediction in terms of where it should go in the future. And that's kind of the gist of it. There's many different kinds of algorithms and stuff like that you can look at, and different types. But in general, that's kind of really what it is using statistics to understand where we are now and where we came from in the past to predict where we're going in the future. So, there might be algorithms in terms of predicting where there's going to be crime, for example. I know some of the police forces use some of this software where there's going to be crime located based on sort of what's going on in the demographics, for example. Or there is, where there's going to be a poacher, for example, is a really cool example of machine learning algorithms where there's poachers going to be based on, where there's elephant poaching, for example, based on, what's going on in the area, sort of crime rates and all that kind of stuff, and weather patterns and all that kind of things. You can sort of feed those in to get a good understanding of where crime is going to be, so you can predict where you can go. You can predict like weather patterns, all sorts of really interesting things, applications for machine learning. And really what's key here with machine learning currently as it stands is really application specific. So there's not like this kind of giant Skynet sort of perspective. We know, if you've ever watched Terminator 2, I recommend you go watch it. It's a great movie, but there isn't this sort of big overviewing sort of Skynet idea that machines are sort of learning and as a whole and sort of synchronizing. It's going to get there in the immediate or in the future. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, right? So generally, this is a pattern that we've had for hundreds of thousands of years, basically from when we had used a stick as human beings as a tool, either as a spear or a digging stick, or sort of getting grubs out of the ground. We've always used tools and machines to rely on to help us actually become better. So it's simply an extension of us as human beings actually becoming a little bit better than what we are before in terms of productivity, in terms of our ability to apply ourselves and extend ourselves in different ways. So it's kind of an extension, and we've been doing this repeatedly over and over and over again. In terms of the issue of jobs, for example, I don't think that they're going to replace the jobs. They are going to replace our jobs, or a lot of the ones that we know about, But there's going to be, what's really cool thing with economics in terms of entrepreneurship, for example, is that things sort of spontaneously pop up. There's going to be all sorts of applications we would never have thought about that we can apply ourselves and create new jobs in that area. For example, YouTube videos. Who would have thought that anybody would have made a living off of YouTube videos 10 years ago? It seems like a really stupid thing, right, to be honest. Or that there is social media people that their full-time job is to go on and promote things on social media. Really stupid idea if you think about it, but it's a viable thing. It actually makes money for people. And what the critical idea is there going to be value generated from that particular task, and there's definitely going to be value generated. I don't know what it's going to look like. Maybe the value is going to be, maybe we're going to have a better idea of placing value on love, for example, and we're going to be able to assess that much more concretely, and at that point we can maybe pay for it, for example. I don't know what it's going to look like in 10 years, but it's definitely going to change, and our idea of what jobs are going to change dramatically once machines start becoming bigger part of our surrounding, right? And that's where I want to start in terms of understanding what's going to happen in the future. In the immediate term, like that is kind of now to like 5-10 years from now, machines are already doing a lot of the things that we are thinking about at this moment. We are highly integrated with machines at this point. We're highly integrated with sort of prediction algorithms, for example. Anytime that anybody codes anything in a computer program, that is a prediction algorithm of where we're going to go in the future. They're just thinking about patterns of how things have been done in the past, and they're just using that sort of algorithmic sense to sort of predict where they're going to go in the future. And there's lots of sort of, just in the immediate term, we're highly integrated with machines. We're not gonna have to really worry about and think about machine learning in the sense that there is any sort of problems that's gonna happen from it, other than it's gonna simplify a lot of tasks. It's going to reduce a lot of redundancy in the things that we do at this moment, and it's gonna make our lives a lot better in the immediate term, because there's a lot of really simple, easy tasks, for example, that they're just mundane, they're really boring, and machines do a really good job of going through and looking at tasks that are really boring and doing those repeatedly and sort of replacing those particular tasks. So anything that is really boring and tedious, machines are going to replace those in the near term, right? So anything that's really tedious like that. So whether it is, you can start seeing it in the grocery stores now in a lot of developed countries. In the US, for example, you're starting to see machines taking over, using sort of the self-checkout lines, for example. Those are wonderful things. Amazon is taking over a lot of the in-person shopping, for example. But not a lot of stores are so that's sort of the redundant, boring stuff that they're replacing. But the stores that are doing really, really well are ones that have experiences. You can look at my old video that I have about that. And in the immediate term, there is lots of really fun things that are going to happen, and it's going to be a really wonderful experience in the next 5 to 10 years, because machine learning is really in its infancy, and it's only going to start taking off more and more as computing power gets larger and larger. The amount of data storage we have gets larger and larger, and it's growing exponentially, really, really fast, and computing power is growing extremely fast, and that doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. It just continues to grow at this moment. Maybe it will slow down in the future. We don't know at this moment, but it looks like it's going to continue on for at least 10, 20, 30 years from now, as kind of a really broad prediction. Now, in the long term, should be thinking about sort of the consequences of machines. So obviously, yes, you have to start worrying about the long-term consequences of machines and machine learning, for example. Robots are going to become much more closer integrated with our society. They're going to be very, very closely integrated. It's going to be something, basically, it is like the singularity, if you've ever heard of that term, right? So there's Ray Kurzweil actually had this idea of the singularity, where essentially machines people are going to be highly integrated. We already kind of have that at this moment. If you think about your iPhone, for example, there is machine and we're learning algorithms on everything that you do on your iPhone. A lot of things that you do on your iPhone that's just really addictive, for example, to use Facebook, for example. It's very, very predictive on what you like and what you like to see. And that's why it's really hard to take your eyes off it. It's going to become more and more integrated. It's going to be a really fascinating experience. But we have to think about this as a society and where we should actually take this. And that's why I'd highly recommend to have like things like task force, for example, committees, for example, to sit down and start thinking about what are the long-term consequences of machines and where we should take them. But here's the thing, it's going to be really specific to the industries that they're in and the specific context that they're in currently at this moment. That is, machines are getting interlinked and there's going to be much more networking of machines, but we're still, at this point, we're still really, really context specific. And I can't see that in the, maybe 10 years out, that might start changing, maybe 20 years out, that might start changing where we could start seeing patterns. But it's kind of done on purpose why we don't want to have things too interlinked at this moment as well, because there's so many knowledge domains and specific knowledge that you can get by focusing in on specific areas. You can actually gain a tremendous amount of returns to search, for example, in those particular areas. So it really probably doesn't make sense to sort of use a broad-based sort of machine learning type algorithms and things like that currently or in the long term, but we still have to think about the very specific consequences and how they're going to be dealt with, how we're going to be thinking about them, and whether it is sort of industry-sponsored committees and task force and things like that, or as well as sort of government-sponsored regulations and committees and stuff is something that we should be thinking about and sort of asking for in terms of thinking about the implications of what machines are for the specific context. And now we already do that, right? That's the reason why we have a lot of government, because we have new technology that comes into play and they're constantly thinking about the implications of this new technology. That's all a machine is, and machine learning is artificial intelligence. It's just a new machine, a new tool that we can get access to. It's going to be really exciting stuff. But we should start thinking about that and sort of planning for it in the future and how we're going to shape the future of where this is going to go to. So, for example, Facebook and the social media sort of giants, it would be good for governments to sit down and start really heavily thinking about, what are the consequences of these particular platforms and where we should go in terms of even with marketing and things like that. It's a really important thing to think about and sort of guiding our future and where we should go. And having sort of just a vision of how we should actually change or think about machines going forward. So that's what I have to say about machines. If you like it, if you like these kind of videos, make sure you do a thumbs up. I can do a lot more of them. Watch some of the older ones. I do talk a lot about innovation, technology, and things like that. But once again, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I'm trying to create this reciprocity platform so that, and the E is spelled with a 3, so that you can help solve some of the anxiety that you feel when you want peer feedback on your writing or whatever project that you're doing. So that's it. Have a good day. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.